Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. Cave Dwellers. Arian and his friends, Tony, Hillary, and Richard, stepped from the darkened theater into the brightly lit lobby. And that was really cool, Brian exclaimed as he and his others stopped to look at the movie poster on the wall beside the entrance. In the suspenseful scene, a world-famous archaeologist and his three student assistants were uncovering a pair of dusty ancient scrolls from a hidden compartment in an eerie tomb. Several shadowy figures were lurking in the background as if ready to cause some trouble. Yeah, that was a cool movie, Tony agreed. But if I had been one of those assistants, I would never have let those old guys steal the scrolls without a fight. Come on, Hillary said. The zombie creatures had them surrounded. They had to give up the scrolls. Brian frowned. I think Tony's right. It would have been better if they tried to fight their way out in the first place. Then they wouldn't have had to face the zombies later. Hillary rolled her eyes. Then that wouldn't have been much of a movie, would it? Richard hadn't said a word. In fact, Richard was still staring at the poster as if lost in thought. You know what would be really cool? If we could go on a dig in some ancient tomb or something. Well, you're out of luck there, Tony said. There's no tombs around here. No, but we could explore Spirit Cave, Hillary pointed out. Yeah, but a cave isn't the same as a tomb, Tony replied. Well, I read in a magazine that about 20 years ago, some people were exploring down south in Mammoth Caves, and they found a mummy. Richard snickered, rolled his eyes. Oh, give me a break, Hillary. Cross my heart, Hillary shot back. Yeah, she's right, Brian said. It wasn't like an Egyptian mummy or anything, but it was a body of some guy who died 100 years ago. Nobody's ever found anything as cool as that in the caves up around here, but Mr. Glaser, my next-door neighbor who studies history, he told me that Native Americans in this area used the caves right at the edge of County Line Park for all kinds of things. Things like what? Richard asked with interest. He and his family had only recently moved to Kentucky. He didn't know a lot about the area. Oh, I don't know. They stored food there, and the shamans, they were kind of like priests. They sometimes performed secret rituals, supposedly to trap evil spirits. What kind of evil spirits? Hillary questioned. Brian's story had mesmerized the circle of his friends. Well, Mr. Glaser told me about a half-man, half-bat creatures that could make themselves invisible. Bats are such friendly creatures, aren't they? Victimized they are. Poor bats. Half man, half bats make themselves invisible. That sounds good. That sounds cool, Tony agreed. That's not what the local Native Americans thought. These bat creatures supposedly captured people. Captured what for? Well, nobody knows for sure, but their victims were never seen alive again. The legend says that the shamans tracked the creatures to their hiding place in a cave. They then used magic to seal them in. Brian's eyes widened as an idea occurred to him. Hey, guys, why don't we go see if Mr. Glaser's story has any truth to it? Tony shook his head. Well, lots of kids have already explored Spirit Cave to death. Yeah, who cares, Brian said. I bet there's still some cool arrowheads and stuff up there, and it's close enough we can just ride our bikes. It didn't take long for him to convince the others. They decided to set out their expedition on that weekend. Come Saturday morning, Brian checked the batteries in his flashlight, made room in his backpack for a few extra granola bars. Satisfied he had everything he needed, he hopped on his bike and he headed over towards Hillary's house. When he got there, she was already waiting at the end of her block with Richard and Tony. My mom wasn't going to let me go, she said. I had to swear to be back by lunchtime. Let's get out of here before she changes her mind. County Line Park was a grassy oasis on the border of a sparse forest of maple and beech trees. Underlying the forest was a layer of limestone. Over thousands of years, groundwater had seeped through the limestone, scouring out caves and channels within. We'll have to hike up from here, Brian explained to Richard as he secured his bike cable around a tree. There's a cave near the top of the hill. That's where Dad and I found all those arrowheads. 10 minutes later, the group stood at the narrow cave entrance. Richard shined his flashlight inside. Has anybody ever got lost in there? No, Brian assured him. Spirit Cave doesn't go back very far. A couple of passages lead off it, but they're both dead ends. If it's bat people you're worried about, forget it. This cave doesn't even have any real bats. Real bats? Richard asked in surprise. Sure. There's zillions of them around here. They're just the plain old brown bats. They won't hurt you or anything. But you just don't want to scare a whole bunch of them inside a cave because they start flying all over the place. Hey, you guys, Hillary called out. I don't want to waste time out here. Let's see what we can find. One by one, the others slipped inside the low, wide chamber, which was dim and cool in spite of the sunny day. Richard moved the slender beam of his flashlight across the sandy floor. From the tracks, it looks like this place has been well explored. I don't think we're going to find anything here. Look, Tony said with mock pride. I've already made a discovery. He held up a crushed soda can in the glow of his light. Hey, what's this? Richard asked, ignoring him. He pointed his light toward a smaller opening. Oh, that's one of the passages, Hillary answered, heading off along the dark, rocky corridor. Come on, I'll show you. The others followed Hillary. After a few moments, she called back a warning. Watch where you're stepping. The ground's not very even in here. But Hillary's warning came too late for Richard, who stumbled over a furrow in the path and dropped his flashlight. It rolled into the shadows at the far edge of the corridor and lodged in a crevice between two slabs of rock. I'll get it for you, Tony offered, trotting over to it. But as he turned Richard's flashlight to pick it up, he noticed that the beam lit up something beyond the passage wall. Two light-colored slabs of limestone with odd markings scratched into them that covered most of the gap. There's an opening over here. Look! Looks like somebody put these rocks here on purpose, but they're a little loose. He called his friends over. Come on, guys, help me. Wait a minute, Brian cautioned. Those look like some sort of ancient petroglyphs on the slabs. Maybe we shouldn't mess with that until someone who knows what they're doing checks it out. Oh, we're just going to take a look. Come on, if it looks dangerous, we'll put the rocks back over the opening. Nobody else will know about it. With a hesitant shrug, Brian agreed. Working together, the four kids were able to roll the two limestone slabs out of the way, exposing a wide gap big enough to crawl into. Hillary knelt at the edge of the opening and leaned over. Oh, the air is so cold and musty, she said as a small shower of sand and pebbles streamed in, dusting her hands with a fine, thin coat of limestone. She turned her flashlight from one angle to another. Hey, listen, I hear running water. Come on, let's check it out. I don't know, maybe we should go back, Brian said. Come on, Brian. This might be what we're looking for. I don't want anybody else to get to it first. Yeah, Tony's right, Richard agreed. I said we check it out. Come on. So squeezing through the gap, the kids found themselves at the top of a wide rock ledge at a cavern wall, almost like a steep ramp jutting out from the rock wall. The ledge sloped steadily down about 30 feet to the floor of a very large cavern. The moist, rocky walls all around them had a slight greenish glow that was just bright enough to enable the group to see their surroundings. I've heard about stuff that glows in caves, Brian whispered as they made their way carefully down the steep ledge to the floor of the cavern. It's some kind of fungus or something. Tony held up his hand. Listen. Do you hear that? I heard some squeaking. I bet there are bats in here. He turned his flashlight to the cavern roof, but saw only bare rock. Hey, look! Richard cried, pointing the beam of his flashlight toward a large boulder near the opposite wall. The huge rock was covered with primitive markings. A small, swift stream of water ran in a channel beside it. There's your running water, Hillary. It must be an underground stream. It seems to be seeping in from an opening about halfway up the wall, then it disappears into that tunnel. It probably goes back underground. And look! He played his beam of light across the entrances to several passageways that led off for the main cavern. This place must be riddled with tunnels and caverns no one knows about. Just think, because of a freak accident with my flashlight, we'll be the first to explore them. Creeping across the cavern floor, Richard examined the wall beside the big rock. The damp, glistening surface was inscribed with same strange markings as the boulder. All at once he gasped and backed up, bumping into Brian. Both boys fell to the soft earth right at the foot of a crude statue carved right into the rock wall. Its large, evil face stared directly down at them. Its hideous eyes shone with a reflective gleam of Brian's flashlight. It, it's it's a statue of a monster, just like the ones in the local Native American legends, Brian said with a shudder. The body appeared almost human, but a pair of bat-like wings rose behind it, and its long fingers were tipped with hooked claws. The scowling mouth of the stone creature was open, and crystal clear water bubbled out from over its sharp stone teeth, then trickled down the body, forming a pool at the statue's feet before flowing away into the darkness beyond. Wow, Hillary marveled as she looked up at the statue. It's incredible. Somebody must have thought this place was really important to go to all the work of carving this. She reached out her cupped hand and let it fill with water. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Brian cautioned. My guess is the statue was carved by shamans as a warning about something. Maybe it's the water. Maybe it's poison. Oh, come on. The streams around here are okay to drink. She lifted her hand to her lips and took a sip. Oh, it's good. Her voice echoed slightly. Listen to that, Richard said. There's an echo. He raised his head and called out, Hello! His greeting vibrated eerily through the chamber. Don't do that, Brian begged. He fought a sudden urge to race out of the cave. I have a bad feeling about this place. Look, now we know what's down here, so let's just... But before he could finish, Richard cupped both hands around his mouth, threw back his head, and called out an even louder, Hello! All at once the cavern filled with a swirling sound. Then the air seemed to boil and surge with the beating of hundreds of small, unseen wings. What's happening? Hillary cried. Something invisible struck her cheek, leaving a long scratch. A droplet of blood welled up below her eye and trickled down to her mouth. Richard fell to the floor and covered his face while Tony crouched in a corner. Pinned against the slimy wall, Brian felt pokes and jabs coming at him from every side as the squealing noise rose all around him to a frenzied pitch. It was happening so fast. All he could do was lash out at the invisible winged creatures, racing back and forth, casting frightening shadows against the walls of the cavern. Finally, the fury subsided. The cavern grew quiet. What was that? Hillary moaned as she dabbed cool water from the stream on her injured cheek. Then she jumped back with a shriek. There's something in this water! Brian looked down and saw that she was right. Something was struggling to stay afloat in the pool of water that rippled at the feet of the statue. At first, all he could see was the movement. Then slowly a shadow began to form, and at last a small brown bat became visible. It labored at the edge of the pool, then flew upward to nestle in the shadows of the cavern roof. Brian looked at Richard sternly. Do not yell in here again! He glanced upwards at the seemingly bare roof. There must be hundreds of bats up there. We just can't see them. And if we can't see them, who knows what else might be in here? Invisible bats? But how did they become invisible? Tony asked with a tremor in his voice. The air, maybe? Or the water? Richard rasped, pointing at Hillary. To everyone's amazement, their friend was fading. With a sob, she held up her hands. You can see right through me, she said with a gasp. She looked at Brian in bewilderment. Suddenly, Brian saw that she wasn't looking at him, but beyond him. Her expression was turning from confusion to one of complete panic. Get away! Get away! She screamed, snapping her horrified gaze from side to side. Cringing, she shouted in horror. Stay away! The water, Brian yelled as his friend disappeared completely. He reached out for her, and although he could still feel her, she just wasn't there. Quick, Hillary, get into the water, he demanded, forcing her toward the pool. Drinking the water probably made you invisible like one of the bats. One of them reappeared when it got soaked in the pool. Maybe the same thing will work for you. It's working, Tony whispered as Hillary landed in the water and slowly became visible again. As she did, the boys could see that her face was twisted into a grimace of sheer terror. They're all around us, guys, she clutched Brian. Those things. She stabbed her finger in the air toward the carved stone statue. I could only see them when I was invisible. They're everywhere. We got to get out of here, Richard yelled. Suddenly, Brian felt powerful, clawed hands reaching for him, grabbing him. Flailing his arms, he beat at the enemy he could not see. Following Hillary's lead, he stumbled back across the cavern floor toward the ledge that led upward to the gap through which they had entered. Oh! Tony screamed from somewhere in the shadows. Struggling to climb the rocky, sloping ledge, Brian witnessed Tony and Richard dragged toward a dark, side passage by beings he couldn't see. "We can't help them now," Hillary yelled out. "Keep going, Brian, keep going." Hillary and Brian continued their ascent, sliding on the damp, slippery ledge. At the top, Hillary clambered through the small opening and then helped to pull Brian up behind her. "The limestone slabs," he choked out between breaths. "Someone must have put them there to trap the invisible creatures in the cavern. The legend is true. The markings must be some kind of magical symbols the monsters can't pass beyond. We've got to put the slabs back exactly like they were." Together they slid the heavy slabs into place, trying unsuccessfully to line up the odd markings. Then they raced along the upper passage toward the light. Gasping in fear and pain, they burst through the cave opening into the bright midday sunlight. Hillary fell sobbing to the ground. Brian, lying next to her, gazed up at the bright sun, letting its warmth flood into him. "We made it," Hillary murmured softly. "We're safe. We got to go back for Tony and Richard, but first we can go get some help." Brian looked over to her and felt chilled to the bone. "Yeah, maybe not." He pointed to the ground. Although there was nothing to be seen around them, they were surrounded by a ring of shadows. Shadows with huge bat wings and long-fingered hands with hooked claws. And the shadows were slowly closing in. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.